I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. All 26 House Republicans who sit on the Republican-led House Oversight Committee are refusing to sign on to a statement denouncing white nationalism and white supremacy. It is a two-sentence statement that seems so obvious, so basic, something that how could you possibly reject? But these MAGA House Republicans are rejecting it. Let me read for you the statement denouncing white nationalism and white supremacy that the House Republicans who sit on the Oversight Committee all refused to sign. This is what the statement says. We, members of the Committee on Oversight and Accountability, together denounce white nationalism and white supremacy in all its forms, including the Great Replacement conspiracy theory. These hateful and dangerous ideologies have no place in the work of the United States Congress or our committee. It's signed by every Democratic Congress member who sits on the Oversight Committee. It is signed by none of the Republican members who sit on the Oversight Committee. And the House Democrats have requested that the House Republicans sign on to what should be a bipartisan letter because during certain Oversight Committee hearings last week, a lot of the House MAGA Republicans said a lot of racist things, said a lot of hateful things, embraced the white replacement conspiracy theory, basically attacked immigrants in some of the most racist and derogatory terms. So let me just read to you the letter that Democrats sent to these House Republicans on March 5th, 2023. Dear Chairman Comer, remember James Comer leads the Oversight Committee for the MAGA Republicans. I write to follow up on my request that the committee's Republican members join me and committee Democrats in denouncing white nationalism and white supremacy and the use of related conspiracy theories, including the, quote, Great Replacement theory during committee hearings and in all our work together. As you may recall, during the committee's February 7, 2023 hearing titled On the Front Lines of the Border Crisis, a hearing with Chief Patrol Agent, several committee Republicans invoked dangerous and conspiratorial rhetoric, echoing the racist and nativist tropes peddled by white supremacists and right-wing extremists. In particular, some members repeatedly described the number of migrants arriving at the border as a, quote, invasion, and even went so far as to falsely accuse the Biden-Harris administration of implementing a plan to, quote, deliberately open our border for purposes of, quote, changing our culture, mirroring language often used by MAGA extremists who believe that pro-immigration policies are designed to replace white populations with non-white immigrants and other racial minorities. As I explained to you at the hearing, such language borrows from the Great Replacement theory, the central dogma of contemporary white supremacy that has repeatedly been invoked by white nationalists to justify violent acts of domestic terrorism, including the mass murders of dozens of Americans at a Tops supermarket in Buffalo, New York, the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and a Walmart in El Paso, Texas. This is not the first time that you and other House Republicans have been called on to publicly denounce and renounce the racist and xenophobic tenets of white supremacy. On June 8, 2022, following the racially motivated Tops supermarket mass shooting in Buffalo, New York, House Democrats passed H.Res. 1152, a resolution to condemn the Great Replacement theory and affirm the commitment of the People's House to combating white supremacy and race hatred. Despite then Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy's acknowledgement that white supremacy and white nationalism are definitely not American, not a single House Republican voted in favor of that resolution. In the words of the late Chairman Elijah Cummings, quote, we are better than this. As chairman, you have another opportunity to take a public stand against the deliberate amplification of dangerous racist rhetoric that has deadly consequences in this country. That is why I am renewing my request for you and committee Republicans to join committee Democrats in speaking with one voice to forcefully and unequivocally denounce white nationalism and white supremacy and the use of its central contemporary conspiracy theory, the Great Replacement Theory. For your convenience, I'm enclosing a draft statement for your consideration, which has been signed by every Democratic member of this committee. If committee Republicans intend to continue examining the southern border and related policies, it is imperative for every member of this committee to make clear to the American people that we speak with one voice to reject dangerous conspiracy theories and racist and anti-Semitic ideology in our committee's deliberations and decision-making. I feel certain and I fervently hope that you agree. Thank you for your prompt attention to this important matter. Signed, Jamie Raskin, Congress member, ranking member, Committee on Oversight and Accountability. And then you see it has the statement that I read at the outset of the video, which says, we, members of the Committee on Oversight and Accountability, together denounce white nationalism and white supremacy in all its forms, including the, quote, Great Replacement conspiracy theory. These hateful and dangerous ideologies have no place in the work of the United States Congress or for this committee. And so as you go and look at this, you'll see that every single Democrat has signed on, but you'll also see that every single Republican has not signed on. Folks, this is basic stuff that once upon a time, not too long ago, we could all have objective realities here in the United States of America, right? That domestic terrorism is bad, that we need to call it out in all of its forms. You know, on one of the podcasts I host, it's called Legal AF, I read this quote, and I asked my co-host, I said, who said this? I'll read it to you right now. Let's see if you know who read this. The quote says, the government is afraid of the guns people have because they have to have control of the people at all times. Once you take away the guns, you can do anything to the people. You give them an inch and they take a mile. I believe we are slowly turning into a socialist government. The government is continually growing bigger and more powerful, and the people need to prepare to defend themselves against government control. And so I asked my co-host, I said, who do you think wrote that? Who do you think wrote that? And my co-host said, Marjorie Taylor Greene, could it be Lauren Boebert? Was it Gosar? Was it Gomer? Was it Jim Jordan? It sounds like it can be any MAGA Republican. I said, no, that was Timothy McVeigh. That was Timothy McVeigh, the domestic terrorist who committed one of the most atrocious acts in our nation's history, the Oklahoma City bombing, which bombed the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, on April 19th, 1995, killing many, many, many Americans. 168 deaths, 680 people were injured. But you take that rhetoric, right? And that rhetoric, if you were around that time like I was, you remember a lot of people were saying, how did the FBI not detect the warning signs when there were people out there saying things like that? Those were red flags. Those were red flags. The FBI should have known. Well, now you have an entire political party, the Republican Party, the MAGA Republican Party, that's the rhetoric that they use every single day. Look, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say the following. This is what we also posted on our MeidasTouch network Instagram channel. The Republican Party is now the most radicalized and dangerous major political party in American history. I would say it's one of the most radicalized and dangerous groups in American history. Any Republican who doesn't denounce Tucker Carlson and the party's open support of domestic terrorists is complicit. And look, there's no one who I could even think of on the MAGA Republican side who is moderate. Look, I'll give you an example. You may remember this back from January 22 of 2023 of this past year, where Margaret Brennan, who hosts Face the Nation, brought on to our show Republican Mike Turner. And she asked Turner, he sits on the Oversight Committee, Turner, you got a lot of election deniers on the Oversight Committee. How do you respond? And I'll play the clip for you right now, but Turner does there's a lot of Democrats who are election deniers. That's just not true. And he turns it on, it's a Democrat thing. It's a both sides thing. Here, play this clip.
I also want to ask you what leadership looks like with Republicans in charge. You are also on House Oversight.
Correct.
Of the 26 Republican members on the committee, 19 of them denied the results of the 2020 election. Your colleagues now include Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, Andy Biggs, Lauren Boebert, Scott Perry. They all played critical roles in the former president's attempts to overturn the 2020 election results. Do you have any concerns about working with these lawmakers? I mean, you're very much a centrist.
Well, even on the Democrat side, there's been a number of people who objected to President Bush's reelection and voted against certifying his election.
I'm asking about you, your party, and your colleagues.
There's a long history of both sides having raised issues, including, you'll recall, the Al Gore taking President Bush's election.
You're not an election denier by CBS
Court
standards, just to be clear.
I am not, and I work with both sides of the aisle, and there are election deniers on both sides of the aisle.
You are comfortable with all those individuals I just rattled off and the fact that the majority of the Republicans on this committee denied election results? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm comfortable with is the electorate are very smart. And these people have been sent to Congress to represent their districts and to be part of the congressional debate to lead us to what's going to be bipartisan, bicameral resolutions. We have a split government right now. Republicans control the House. The Senate is controlled by the Democrats. You have a Democrat president. We're going to have a lot of debate and discussions. And I think this is going to be a very fruitful period for Congress and for our country, because it's going to have to be bipartisan, bicameral. And I believe that the president, in opening negotiations with the Republicans, is beginning to start that process.
I think Margaret Brennan did a pretty good job with the questioning, but I think she needed to press a little harder. It's not her fault that the format of these shows is you got to cut to a commercial break. So they say they're both sides BS, and then they sign off. But it's not both sides. The American people realize that this is not a both sides issue at all. I mean, you got MAGA Republicans who can't even condemn white supremacy, the great replacement theory. They can't state they're against domestic terrorists. Frankly, they say they're for domestic terrorists. They call the January 6th insurrectionists political prisoners. They are cheering on the release of propaganda by Tucker Carlson, selectively editing video footage, surveillance footage that the Capitol Police said is going to get or could get Capitol Police officers killed. So what do we do? How do we address this? It's what we're doing collectively in this pro-democracy community. We're calling it out each and every day, right? We're building pro-democracy media. We're creating new institutions to replace the ones that don't work in the past. And that's what we could do in the MeidasTouch community. Build and build and build our network. So one way you can help us grow, hit subscribe to our audio podcast by searching MeidasTouch wherever you get your audio podcast. You can chip in on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. That's how you can help. That's what our calling is right now. That's what I wanted. I never thought that would be what I'd be doing, but this is it. This is what I want to devote my life to. Then you have members of Congress, Democratic members of Congress, pro-democracy members of Congress, forcibly pushing back. And you see, and forcefully pushing back. You see what they're doing with these letters. They are calling out the MAGA Republicans and saying, here, call out domestic terrorism. Here's a simple sentence. Where do you stand? I, for one, I don't know what you think. I want to see Democrats do this every single day. Let's talk about a woman's right to control her body. Send them a letter. Let's talk about the idea of AR-15s near schools. Let's put them on the record. Let's go through every one of these issues that we know 65, 70, 75% of Americans support, but that MAGA Republicans are preventing from being implemented. Let's do a statement. Climate change is a real thing. Here, MAGA Republicans, you sign it. Let's just go through list by list. Let's go. We want to protect Social Security. Here you go, MAGA Republicans. What do you have to say about it? Go through each thing, make them sign these each and every day. Let's get two stories like this out every day. But this is the right way. Democrats should lead with their actions, their conduct, and their messaging, and they're doing a good job. They're doing a good job. Credit where credit is due. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network, and as I said before, hit subscribe right now. Until next time, see you later.
The best part of waking up? MAGA Tears in my cup. Check out the new MAGA Tears mug available now at store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com. It's 100% union made right here in the USA. I know I'm not tired of winning yet. How about you? Get yours today.